Well, welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, the Jaguar Mining's channel as gold continues to propel. We're getting some pivotal updates from the company with the CEO joining us, Vern Baker. First and foremost, welcome, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Kyle. How are you today?
Living the dream, and it's such a pleasure to get you on. So, I want to dive right into this. First and foremost, with what's been going on inside the company. In December, there was an incident at the Santanoco dry stack pile at your MTL complex in Brazil, which resulted in the temporary suspension at the Turmalina, get the pronunciation right, mine. Can you kind of tell us what's been going on here?
You bet. We had an incident at the mine on Saturday morning, the 7th of December, where some of our workers identified that there was an anomaly in our dry stack. We then moved everybody out from that area, including some residents. And about an hour to hour and a half later, the stack started to move. It didn't move real fast. Over the next about 7 to 8 hours, it moved total of about 450 meters. So gradually moved its way downhill with some pauses and some movement, but never in a huge rush. Displaced, probably we think it's about 600,000 cubic meters from our pile, which is less than 10% of that pile. But it displaced and did start to impact some of our neighbors. So we ended up impacting on 5 different homes. As the wasn't actually our material that impacted those homes, but as that material moved down, it pushed a wave of topsoil did reach into the community and impact 5 homes. We within the day we were on it. We got radar monitoring on it by the next day, so we could tell if we got any additional movement. And there's actually been no significant movement since that time. So you have right now, because the pile moved, and that's where we placed both our waste rock coming out of the mine and our tails after they'd been filtered. We were ended up with our mine being shut down, and we're in the process now of basically restructuring that pile so that it will be safe, and with dealing with the impact we've had on our neighbors. Well, really only 5 homes were actually impacted by the movement itself. We ended up evacuating over 100 homes that were just within an area of, some of it was very, very small risk, but within an area that there could be potentially some risk. So we had a significant number of our neighbors that we had to relocate. We provided housing in the form of hotels immediately. As of now, all but 2 of those people are either staying with friends, staying in their other homes, or we've relocated into homes which we've rented and furnished for those people. So that's what happened. We had a slump of our pile. It shut down our mine. We're currently discussing with our agencies, right, the mine regulation and the environmental regulation, what the steps are to ensure the stability of the pile, and what steps we need to do to bring our Turmalina mine back online.
And speaking of kind of bringing it back online, do you want to talk a little bit about what we can expect from the operations or when they could restart, what the cost could potentially be?
Well, I would love to. However, right now, we do not have any firm timelines because as we have begun the engineering solutions, which we have several, they need to go through approval processes, and we need to get the acceptance of the regulatory agencies that will allow us to go back to work. We truly believe it's going to be before the end of this year. It could be fairly soon if you look at the actual impact on what we're doing in the mine versus the pile. But until we really have guaranteed the security of the area and the stability of that pile, and we've gotten acceptance of the regulatory agencies that it's safe to move forward with those, um, we'll still be working on what that time frame is.
Now, just diving a little bit deeper, you received that notice of a fine related to this incident. What is the process of the appeal, and how long do you think this could take to determine an outcome?
Um, well, on how long it will take, that's uh, probably anyone's guess. We know that in the past, the process has taken up to 3 years. When expedited, it's been done as quickly as a year. We're already in the appeal process on that fine. We see that fine as completely out of bounds relative to the actual scale of the incident itself. And so that appeal process has been started. We're working on it. Um, Basically, it could go anywhere from a year to 3 years. We think that we have very good position to drastically reduce the fine, but a lot of that depends on our behavior and how well we deal with the impacts that we've had on the area, and on ensuring that we have a good, stable, and safe mine in the future. The fine itself also, when you see fines like this in Brazil, they're often negotiated as to payment schedule. It doesn't tend to be you have to pay them on pass. Other mining companies with some fairly significant fines have actually drawn them out to 30-year payment schedules as long as that, but 5 and 10 years are pretty common. So the negotiations, the appeal and the negotiations will probably be ongoing for a minimum of a year, and it could be up to 3 years. We're responsible for this incident, and we recognize that. We think that paying a fine isn't out of line, but the scale of the fine that we see here, we believe is out of line. So
Now, can you discuss a little bit then on the other spectrum of what this is going to do on your cash balance? Do you see this affecting your balance sheet heavily in the future? Do you want to give a bit of insight on that?
well, we ended the year, well, we had this incident occur towards the end of the year. We have a very strong cash balance when we started. We ended the year with about $46 million US in the bank, and and we still have an operating mine. Our Pilar mine is still operating at potential. In fact, we're looking to expand that potential a little bit. The situation is, if we're able to expand that mine by about 15% is what our target is in production this year over our original plans. We really will have potential at current prices and at current exchange to actually not impact that cash balance by year end. We will see in this first quarter, we will see that cash balance go down because we have not yet. We're in the process of augmenting production, and we're kind of full out on expenditures still. We're doing a lot of things to minimize expenditures at Turmalina, but it takes a month or two to get everything geared down to a stable level.
Yeah, I mean, you guys definitely have some other operations going on. Kind of backtracking on what you said there, your Pilar mine, also in Brazil, is still operating. How are you kind of shifting resources from the Turmalina mine to the Pilar mine? And could production be increased at Pilar this year?
Well, as I just said, that's exactly what we're looking at doing. Really, what we'll shift first is some development resources, which is both diamond drilling capacity and um, capacity within the mine. By augmenting those, you very quickly can begin to augment the number of places that you have available to produce ore from and your knowledge base. So as we do that, we would expect to see a modest improvement in the second quarter, and really be set up to do pretty strong production in the second half of the year from Pilar itself.
Yeah, on that note, I just want to finish up with kind of the idea of growth kind of moving forward here. You did mention and iterate that you should see, pretty stable cash coming out to kind of cover these costs. But how will this incident affect your outlook overall?
Well, long term, we don't think it impacts us a lot. We have a growth profile at in our Turmalina complex, actually. So once we're allowed to go back to work and we get things moving, our FINA complex or FINA ore bodies are on the edge of really coming into consistent production. We invested several thousand meters of development within the ore body last year, getting positioned into work areas so we could start that production. Once we get back there, within a month or two, we should have that into a position where it starts to produce. That production should grow with time as we continue to develop that area, but that will allow us to begin increasing our production. Our second major production area will be the Onças de Pitangui project, which we have. It's about 30 kilometers from the Turmalina mill. And we have close to 1 million ounces in total resources there that we are developing the plans and the permitting to start that mine up. We hope to get started in 2026 with the development of that project. So kind of the major production growth that we expect to see is probably delayed by 6 months or so from what we would have thought in November of last year before this incident, but it shouldn't dampen the ability of the company to produce at significantly higher levels within a couple of years. Our biggest impact of this whole thing is definitely the social impact on our neighbors. We've had 200 people that were living in the area. We have to get them placed in other areas. We have to sustain their livelihoods and their quality of life for a period of time. And that's a big part in Brazil. That's a big part of what you have to do to retain the social license to work. So we're working very hard with those individuals with monthly support payments, with housing, with quite a bit of different social support systems that we're putting in place to try and help them work through this time. And we'll be dealing with them as fairly and as well as possible as we deal with this situation, right? It was our pile, it's our responsibility for the instance. Overall, while we moved some tons and they are actually very stable right now, we did not have one person get hurt in this incident. We did not put one bit of dirty water or one bit of our mine waste into a creek. Not one fish was killed. Overall, it's probably a pretty good measure of if you have a problem with a dry stack material and deal with it correctly, the impacts are pretty small. In the past, there have often been incidents with mine waste disposal areas, often wet disposal areas of tails. And we see the advantage as we deal with this and in the fact that, well, it's a huge impact on the individuals who had to move out of their homes and are living in different places. The environmental and the long-term impact of this movement is actually fairly small. And it will allow us to restructure that pile, allow us to return to work, bring about 500 jobs, primary jobs back into the region that we're at, and allow us to grow both those jobs and production in that area for the health of not just our company, but the health of those communities as well.
Yeah, very well spoken. I appreciate all the insights today and just kind of deep diving into this for us as we pass it off to the viewers. We'd love to know what you think in that comment section and consider subscribing as News and Catalyst hit the wire. Of course, we'll bring it to you here. But on that note, we look forward to catching you in the next one.